Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to introduce my today's guest, Matia Volokh, who is a prominent civil activist, politician, uh, uh, politician from the opposition in the Russian Federation. Maria, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and good evening.
Maria, thank you very much again, and I would like to talk with you about European Union. Because basically European Union now facing many challenges. We saw that several years ago, European Union faced a very serious challenge with the migration of refugees, refugee crisis. Before there was a financial crisis. Then there was a coronavirus crisis when states tried to impose restrictions on the free movement of people. And now we see crisis with Russian invasion into Ukraine. So how can you assess the way European Union responds to this crisis? Are you satisfied as a person who used to study the European Union, who understand the European Union very well? Are you satisfied with this response?
Overall, I will say I'm pretty satisfied with the responses to these crises, but like on the EU level. But regarding the individual level, the level of every particular country, it depends. For example, let's get back to the refugee crisis. I think that Germany, the Netherlands, deal with it in a very good way. But certain countries, for instance, Hungary, there were some problems. And I can say the same things about the current situation. For instance, I'm really not satisfied with the Baltic countries' measures against Russia, against Russian citizens. I'm talking about the fact that they closed touristic visas. In my view, this contradicts the European Convention on Human Rights and the EU Charter on Human Rights. But overall, as I said, I think the measures taken by the European authorities are not bad.
You did your LM degree in international law in King's College London, one of the prominent institutions, universities in the United Kingdom. And you have an experience studying in European Union, Master University, and you have an experience being residing in the United Kingdom, studying there. So what do you think? What was the main reason why the majority of the citizens in the United Kingdom, they rejected European Union, they voted for leaving European Union?
I would say the main reason is populism, and we can see this problem all over the world, because right populars are getting more and more popular in the US, in France, when Le Pen almost won the elections, and also the UK. This is dangerous because people tend to trust very bright and simple ideas, but they don't realize the real risks of following this path. And this is what happened in the UK with Brexit. I read some statistics which said that after Brexit, many people said that they will change their vote if they will knew the consequences. So unfortunately, Brexit happened. And I think that populism is the main reason of this.
Maria, let's get back to the beginning of the 90s when Soviet Union collapsed. I remember at that time Francis Fukuyama, American professor, he published several notorious books about which actually stipulated the end of history, because totalitarianism was defeated, democracy won, and actually, these ideas they were also embodied in the process of creation of European Union, because European Union was created in 1992. And at that time, European Union elaborated two policies. One policy was towards Eastern European states like Poland, Hungary, Baltic states, Czech Republic, Slovakia, etc., and separate policies towards Russia, Ukraine, other post-Soviet republic, included with them so-called partnership and cooperation agreements, which were very, let's say, much looser agreements than Europe agreements signed by Eastern European states. So it seems that European Union made a mistake by not trying to keep, let's say, these post-Soviet countries closer to itself, but from the inception, trying to put a wall between them. Yeah. So, do you agree with this thesis that European Union failed to conceal post-Soviet states, especially Russia?
I wouldn't say that this is the mistake of the European Union. I perceive it rather as a mistake of the US. Um, because I think the US mainly influenced this strategy. It's definitely a huge mistake, because we see that after the World War II, Western countries reintegrated Germany into the society, and this is what helped Germany to become a normal normal state with human rights and with everything, with European values. And we didn't see this towards Russia after the end of Cold War, because instead of integrating Russia into the Western society, the US and also the EU kept it a little bit aside. And this is also the main reason why Putin became Putin, why he became as he is. Because at first he tried to get proper international relationships. He wanted to join NATO and he dreamed about the EU, but then he faced this approach, and he got offended, I will say, and this offense lies in the heart of his today's actions, because the main reason for his actions, as I see it, is to show the world that Russia is still strong, Russia is an empire, and he is also a very strong leader that everyone should be afraid of. And this gets back into this. But on the other hand, I do not understand Putin still, because in order to join the EU, in order to get proper international relationships, you have to first deal with the economy and with the institutions within your country. So make sure that there is no corruption, make sure that human rights are respected, that everything functions on the democratic way, and only then you can hope for the proper Western response, for the integration into European society.
So basically, you're now talking about Copenhagen criteria, which were elaborated in 1994. According to them, the state, if it wants to join European Union, has to meet certain criteria like a market economy, a free democratic system, the reception of acquis communautaire, so basically the legal legacy of European Union. Actually, these are now requirements for Ukraine, which European Commission now stressed that Ukraine should, let's say, go through this road of, let's say, adoption acquis communautaire of European Union. Maria, since 2009, European Union obtained its legal personality by Lisbon Treaty, which substituted the constitutional treaty, which was not ratified, actually was suspended. So then Lisbon Treaty was signed and enacted, and it gave European Union a legal personality by abolishing three-pillar system. And still, due to Brexit crisis, etc., there are strong debates about, let's say, different modes of cooperation within European Union. And we are going back and forth to the idea of multi-speed Europe. What is your attitude towards multi-speed Europe? Maybe it will be, let's say, a positive way of development for European Union to allow different state who wants to be involved in enhanced cooperation to be involved in enhanced cooperation, not to wait until other states will be ready to join this type of speed of cooperation.
Um, Unfortunately, I haven't heard about this idea. Could you please elaborate a little bit more what exactly it entails?
Jacques Delors, the head of the European Commission, back in 1980s, proposed the idea of multi-speed Europe or two-speed Europe. So basically, by allowing different states within the European Union to integrate in different spheres faster than other states. So, because we have such example, for instance, Benelux countries, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, who has their separate economic union and they are part of European Union, and we know that they have a more broader way of integration within each other, between each other. And so Jacques Delors, he proposed, you remember at that time, for instance, it was very hard to adopt measures in European Union because there was so-called cooperation procedure, according to which European Parliament only could give a consent, but a Council of European Union had to adopt a decision. But all decisions within the Council was adopted according to a unanimous voting. So it was changed by Single European Act, which introduced qualified majority system to many, let's say, spheres of integration process. So Jacques Delors stipulated that if you can come to the consent between all member states regarding the way European Union has to develop, then fine. Then let's allow part of member states which want to foster integration, not to wait until their public opinion, their political leaders will be ready for a more faster way of cooperation.
Okay, I see. It's difficult to assess your question now, just but I will try to tell you what comes up into my mind at first. So, of course, I'm pro-European integration, and this approach, on the one hand, can be useful in order to deepen at the level of European integration. But on the other hand, leaving some states aside can potentially lead to integration crises, because when some states are fostering their cooperation and other states are remaining like aside, then there can be like a dividing line between them, and this can provoke again populistic rhetorics, or looking more into Russia, into cooperation with Russia or with other less developed states. So I don't know whether it's a good idea, but in order to answer your question properly, I think I have to read about it more and analyze it.
Maria, if we will trace back the history in 1952, when the treaty establishing European Coal and Steel Community was signed, and Jean Monnet was the first chairman of High Authority, at that time European Commission, he envisaged that High Authority has to possess legislative, executive power, and High Authority was embodied with a proper power to enact all decisions which were necessary in order to make the work of European Coal and Steel Community smooth. Then we know the historic process when actually the states came to compromise and they took uh, the power from high authority, legislative power, and they gave this power to the Council of Ministers. So basically, to the representatives of member states. And high authority was renamed to European Commission. It was entrusted only with the executive power. So, do you think that integration process has to be supervised by a supranational body with, let's say, a strong authorities to enact measures binding upon member states? All the system which we now see in European Union is more effective in a long distance.
Mm. I think that the system which there is now is effective for the current time. Um, because when talking about some supranational body which has control over everything, this remains more of a proper federation. And the European Union is still an economic and political union which does not yet have such a body. So it may become necessary when there is more integration. But for the moment, I think that the system functions on a proper way.
You lived in the European Union for several years, studying at Maastricht University, let's say in the center of European Union. I mean, in the sense that the treaty established European Union was signed there. Obviously, there are different centers of European Union, like Brussels, Strasbourg, etc., Luxembourg, but still Maastricht is an important city. So, what do you think? Um, how citizens of member states uh, host European Union, receive European Union? Uh, do they still more lean to their own member states, or they're ready to rely on, let's say, EU institutions?
It depends on a member state, because, for instance, in Maastricht, of course, there was very European
Mhm.
community, not international but European, and the same applies to Brussels, to the Netherlands and Belgium in general. I would also add there Germany, maybe France, Luxembourg. So these countries are rather European. But when we think of Italy, for example, or Portugal, they have a little bit different culture. They're very prone to their own traditions, to their own language. They don't speak English on such a high level as Western European states. So it depends on a member state, I guess.
If you look to the treaty and functioning of the European Union, two basic aims of EU existence are internal market and common area for security policy. So we know that European Union is trying to create, let's say, joint military space, try to coordinate its efforts in the military sphere. Do you foresee that European Union will create something like maybe unified EU forces, which will substitute NATO forces in the light of Russian aggression against Ukraine? Do you think that it will prompt the European Union to be more active in this regard?
But why would you create something that substitutes NATO? I mean, what is the point of it?
Yeah, but maybe this crisis we now have with Russian invasion shows that European Union has to be more coherent, because Vladimir Putin he thought that he can break European Union, and he was sure, I think, that European Union after Russian invasion starts would not be able to adopt any decision, not only sanctions, but generally any decision regarding the situation, because there will be different opinions about the situation. So maybe it is necessary to make a European Union more coherent. So next time when any dictator or authoritarian leader like Putin would like to make an assault against its neighbor state, then European Union, let's say, would be more effective in imposing sanctions, would be more effective in, let's say, contradicting the dictator.
Mm, I really don't see the point of creating an
Mhm,
logical body to NATO, because NATO is meant to use military force
mhm.
um, against the state. So the main reason why they don't do it is that they don't want a third world war, and I don't think that any European leader wants it. So nobody wants more aggression, and nobody wants to risk um, that much. But talking about a way to respond to the Russian aggression with more effective sanctions and with more effective politics, then yes, I believe that it's necessary to to work on this way, but not on a common military alliance.
Last question I would like to ask you. Now you know that many Ukrainians they became refugees because they had to leave Ukraine to find their destiny in the European Union. And European Union hosted millions of Ukrainians, and many Ukrainians they established their own enterprises in different European states. And Ukrainians suggest that the service in the European Union is poorer than, for instance, in Ukraine. And I know it from my experience. I'm sure that comparing, let's say, European service to Russian service in restaurants, in banks, etc., would be also better, yeah, than the European one. And some people, some experts think that one of the reasons why service in the European Union is worse than in post-Soviet countries is actually in the way of, let's say, legislation works, because labor legislation in the European Union is much stricter than in Ukraine, Russia, etc. And that's why it's very hard to dismiss a worker if you're not satisfied with the way he performed his duties, his tasks, etc. So, not like, for instance, in Ukraine, where people, some people, they even actually do not work legally, or legislation works the way that it is really very easy to dismiss the worker if he doesn't perform well for your company. So maybe for European Union, it will be wiser to review its, let's say, socialist policy towards legislation, because it really disturbs the economic development of the European Union. What do you think about this? Should the European Union revise its socialist policy?
You're very right that many Ukrainians and Russians are not satisfied with the services in the EU. I have a friend from Kiev. At the beginning of the war, she moved to Poland, but then she was so angry with the service situation that she removed back to Kiev, and now she lives there, regardless of the fact of constant bombings and everything. So actually, I thought of this from the other perspective, because in my view, the more the higher is the economic well-being, um, the less there is need to the need of creativity in business terms. Um, because in the EU, when you're employed, you have a high salary, you have a proper
Mhm.
lifestyle. You can do whatever you want, travel, eat in the restaurants, and etc. etc. But in Russia and poor countries, people always try to think of what they can do, what they can create, what business they can start to run, And we have so many businesses in Russia, like we literally have a service for everything, every delivery, everything you can think of, it exists in Russia. But in the EU, there is no need for it because people feel comfortable anyways. So at least I used to see it on this way. But regarding the legislation, I don't know actually because, for instance, in the Netherlands, there were so-called night shops run by Turkish citizens or Turkish nationals. It was allowed by law, so they existed there legally, but they were only run by them and not by Dutch citizens. So, yeah, that's a difficult question. I don't know.
Well, I think that the most prominent example is banks, the way they work in the European Union, because, for instance, let's say if you compare the way Raiffeisen Bank perform in Ukraine, and obviously in Ukraine we have Raiffeisen Bank. Raiffeisen Bank exists in Russia as well. I don't know, probably Raiffeisen Bank still operates in Russia, even though there is a war. So I noticed that in Raiffeisen Bank there are many regulations. So they work in, let's say, German, Austrian style. Yeah. And that's why they work much slower than some banks which were originated in Ukraine. Yeah, and if we look, for instance, even in European Union, all, let's say, fintech companies like Paysera, Zen, like Genome, like Revolut, they all have their headquarters in Lithuania. They all have their financial licenses in Lithuania, so basically in post-Soviet countries. So that's why I think that actually post-Soviet country, they have much to offer to all Europe, let's say.
Yes, I agree.
Maria, thank you very much for this interview. For our audience, I would like to remind that Maria is an opposition leader, civil activist, lawyer, uh, who made her LM degree in King's College London and her bachelor's degree at Maastricht University. Thank you very much, Maria, for joining us today.
Thank you.